from all of us, because we are so grateful for the last few days. So I want this morning to start with thank yous. And Ty, to you and your lovely wife, Nancy. I mean, you are the host and hostess par excellence. Wonderful. The way you and your community and friends all around have welcomed us. And I think probably this is one we will always all remember for all the planning and the execution of it. It's just great. Alongside, of course, thanks to your colleagues on the Jackson County Water Conservancy District, excellent. Everyone just talked. You can see it around the room. Everyone really getting acquainted, lots of sharing. So, and your friends who own and operate the River Rock Cafe and Antlers, they couldn't have and continue to have done anything better. I had forgotten how nice and maybe it's been upgraded and remodeled, but I think it's just great, and look forward to coming back sometime. And then a quick thank you to Mountain Parks Electric that helped us on what was it, Tuesday, to use their community room for the finance committee. So it's just been great. So in terms of news, let me start with the River District. Maybe by now you've heard their good news that in their search for a replacement for Eric Kuhn, who can't be replaced, of course. Time marches on. They've chosen Andrew Mueller, and generally to Mueller and to the River District. A recent roundtable. Footnote: if you've tried to get into Glenwood lately, coming from the east, north, or west, it's difficult at certain hours of the day. The bridge is finally
and there's no other way to get across to each other. They have a long there. So we haven't tried to force the members around since it started. It's time for a monthly meeting this Sunday, so we're going to take it to it instead. We're coming right back every year. So, and we'll have a business meeting there, and we're going to visit the irrigated land project that we've been up for a couple of years. Other federal money. They're very popular and probably successful programs. We go look at that on the ground, see how that's going. So for this close, we'll go over and look at the bypass site. And then we'll stop at Camp Breeze wildland area and talk about our river habitat restoration project. So whether cooperating any of you are nearby or good, I can give you the details of where we're going to start. So that's the business roundtable. We've got several of our constituents lining up for CWCB grants, on the water users,
River Watershed Council. So we're standing in line with everybody else, which is good. And of course, the regular basin grant requests are always interesting and gaining interest. And then in just structure for day-to-day work or month-to-month work, we're thinking now of doing what the South Platte, Rio Grande, and Southwest roundtables have done, is to fund a coordinator position to help us with just the regular work of educating, reaching out to the public, and working on grants. So we'll see how that business model works out, but that's under discussion. Also, we're struggling along with our website. I think we started to model Gunnison, which got a really good website. We have the basic structure in place, and so we're ready to add content. So stay tuned for that. I think that'll be coming pretty soon. Grand Valley Water users announced they just got $128,000 from the Bureau of Reclamation for that Water Smart program. And there are a couple other entities in the state that are also in that program. Let me see if I can remember. Cashlaputer Irrigating Company and Lower South Platte Water Conservancy are in that game with us. So that's all. Let's see. Last week, the River District held its annual seminar in Grand Junction. And apparently it was very popular. They thought they'd expanded their latest attendance record by 20%. So, and he gave kudos to Becky and John McLeod and Heather, who apparently did a great job representing CWCB. So thanks, since you were there and we couldn't be. But that's always a good annual seminar, so I'm glad that it was successful again. Calls on the river, calls on the main state have been happening right along. It's just been a game between whether Shoshone is senior or Cameo is senior in any given day. For the Western Slope, both are good, so it makes very little difference for that end of the. This was as of 3 weeks ago. And the whole system is at 111% of normal. So we're still getting flows. There's about 12, let's see, forecasted unregulated inflow into POW, yeah, 111%. So I think that's probably as good as we can get for news on this time of year. So to wind up, I thought it was time to think about winter and forecast the weather. And you know I'm very good at it because I have a 1792 source. I mean, it's been forecasting weather successfully since 1792. And what I'm told is that the Colorado River Basin is going to be cold and snowy for winter. And where there's not snow, it'll be wet. The east side of the Continental Divide will have mild snow for the winter. It's going to be colder than last year, but not colder than average. Precipitation will be above normal throughout the country, so we'll have above normal snowfall all across the state. A weak El Nino will form, and that means cold air mass. It just stay where it belongs. So just for fun, I compared this information, which you know now comes from the old Farmer's Almanac, with Channel 9 News forecasting. They forecast just the opposite. So there you are.
So, I mean, you, thank you. Let's you and I talk if you should. Thank you. Excuse me. Director Randall.
Thank you. For the board, especially George. I was going to try to offer maybe invite a little more color on green method for muscle funding. It's big news. It's a little more better muscle developers. So these are the larval stage, the late larval stage of fossils with green method for. But as of my last update, we have the building fossils with divers out those and doing all of the due diligence. So I guess, so I wonder if then none of that it might be, it is one, use the method for on human sets where those can off the form will be drained dry and not just so that was a strategy for the spread of muscles elsewhere. And it's here that I might look to Jay or Jack or Lauren to see if anybody has more recent update any of that or direction for any of that.
It's going to be on the next agenda item.
Oh, it is. Okay, well, even better. Okay. Well, good. I again just thought that it deserved a little more discussion. Yes.
Further questions for Director? Thank you for that report, Director. Let's move on to the San Juan, San Miguel, Georgia River Basin.
Thank you. Well, I will start out by thanking Director Rothberg for hosting us, and I will give you a specific thank you for picking up the papers after the and thank you to everybody who's hosted us here. This is my first time in North Park, and I just thoroughly enjoyed it. The Southwest Basin Roundtable has not met since our last meeting, so I don't have any specific roundtable updates, but I did do a little bit around robin, and I have some information from basin. So since we were just talking about aquatic nuisance species, I'll give a little update on that. I've been talking with the Florida Water Conservancy District. They asked me to provide an update that they've been actively engaged in the program around the Key Reservoir, which is the second largest reservoir in the state, and it's also not very far from power. So the district has been actively engaged in water conference discussions through the summer around more sustainable funding opportunities, and are just really interested in the level of awareness that the citizens of Colorado have on this issue. So talking a little bit about the work of the foundation, water education, but this is becoming a really important issue in that basin. It sounds like it's becoming an important issue around the state. In other news, the Big Mountain Beach Tribe is negotiating its repayment contract with Reclamation for the Analyst Water Project. And one of the important issues that they've agreed is that the tribe be able to work with local water users to move water where it needs to be used the best. And we've already seen an example of this where they're working with Bottom West and like Durango on a pipeline to deliver water. But they are continuing to work with the Reclamation on that for updates. I've talked to our fifth implementation contractors for the roundtable. They've been working on some educational materials, purchase workshops for the winter, and they have done a couple of presentations on the JED and the IPs and are assisting members.
Hello.
More. We have a water 101 seminar coming up October. At Justice Scott's last year as keynote speaker. So if you would like to come down for this spring, it's usually a really fun and informative day. Now it's a day and a half. So we have the Water 202 seminar. So I'm really excited about that. And then my last update is the San Miguel Stream Management Plan held the first public outreach meeting on September 8th. It was very well attended. It was on Friday night. The parking lot was full. The room was full. We had great participation from the ag irrigation community. I thought there was really an excellent discussion. Baseline, I was really encouraged at just the level of participation. Really looking forward to seeing that great. Other than that, after a good monsoon summer, it's been really high flows throughout the basin. We're now seeing lower than average flows in some of our tributaries, which is a little bit hard to see. A little bit of wandering for the winter next year. That's all.
Thank you for that report. Questions for the director topics. All right, let's move down to the Johnson organization. That's in the plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here and the Water Service District. Great time. I did have one complaint that I actually didn't think you put in a commission where we were stopping. But otherwise, we don't have one. Thank you very much. The Gunnison Basin water supply update. The August precipitation is 75% normal on an annual basis, where 101% normal water.
Okay.
And Blue Mesa and Taylor Park Reservoir both had about average inflows so far this year. We were there in July, we saw relatively high flows in a pretty middle basin, but that's changed significantly now. The entire basin is at one of the water supply conditions. So we're also looking for a little more precipitation for winter. It did rain a lot in July and August, so the hay harvest was delayed several weeks. But then we got about 10 days of sunshine, and a lot of activity going on to get that. The watershed planning effort, which is proceeding under a grant from this board, upper Gunnison, I should say, is advancing significantly. All of the basin coordinators are under contract and are actively engaged in stakeholder outreach. We developed a standard questionnaire, which we have distributed both in person and to various media resources. This is a little above my pay grade, but I understand that younger people will respond better to electronic media than electronic media. We explore that opportunity. We have developed a folder that contains a description of the process and the various information packages. We're working on developing liaisons with various stakeholders, principally stock government, 97% of our water use. We had good participation, but we're trying to formalize that a little bit, make it more effective. We've also begun engagement, significant engagement with environmental groups in the basin, also more public votes. That effort is advancing significantly. The Gunnison Basin Roundtable, as Director George mentioned, we finally put our website online. The content is being expanded all the time. It's wonderful.
I know.
Like others, we have a number of people working on our reserve grants. We kind of pulled that totally. We talked about adjusting our meeting schedule so that we can get applications, get staff, this board more efficiently. We had gone through that we have one schedule on our meeting traditionally has been the first Monday of the month since the very outset. That's become difficult in order to get the applications to this board. So we're going to have to work on changing that. Another water supply. Under construction. Good progress, so that's a positive. And finally, Heidi and I were asked by Ty to be sort of unofficial fishing guides. And we took on that responsibility, and we felt that as part of that, we should observe some quality in the participants. And we decided that the award for that exercise should come to most improved
On a personal note, the reason of the kind of having was really being program our way of thinking. Thank you.
Tenderfoot Mountain, very close to our Dillon headquarters facilities. And that's a picture of the fire. You can just scroll through them. I don't have any particular knowledge about them, but it was a fire that you could see, so people stopped to take pictures of it. This one was much more difficult and more intense. It would burn 25 acres. It started, it was within 100 yards of our headquarters, but moved away. Again, our headquarters formed the incident command post. People camped there, stayed there. On one day, the 19th, that would have been Tuesday, they did 74 drops of chemicals and water. And so they were really trying to, you know, it's a pretty densely packed area, so they wanted to keep it under control before it went anywhere. There are a lot of people around close to that mountain. So they managed today, they are mopping up and moving out. And so it has been a successful effort. There was another photo of, you know, one of the big buckets getting water out of the reservoir. And one cool video that I saw, I mean, maybe people knew this, a little plane goes along in front of the big tanker and lets out a little smoke that shows this is where you need to release. And then the tanker comes along and dumps right where the little marker is. So I thought that was pretty cool. I think it's channel 7, maybe, that has a video that you can go look at. So that was, you know, a little scary. It's pretty unusual to have fires near our facilities, but it happened twice in 3 weeks. But both were fought successfully. A great deal of coordination happened. So it's so it all managed to be successfully concluded. So I believe that's it for me.
Thank you for that report. Questions for Director Wells? Director Gallagher.
Director Wells, can you tell me where was that on Swan Mountain?
It was called Tenderfoot Mountain. I frankly don't know. I just know from the picture of the biker, you know, but I don't know where it is in comparison. Let's see, it's near our headquarters. Our headquarters are toward Keystone, I think. So it's that way. I think that's right.
A little bit beyond Swan.
Could be.
Yeah.
That away. When you get to Silver, you turn across from the reservoir toward Keystone, so it would have been back up that way. So not. Than anything.
Well, clearly, I'm glad this all happened in North Park and not somewhere where there's mostly media outlets. Good enough. Thank you for the report, Director Wells. Let's move to the Rio Grande Basin. Director Dutton.
I'm not going to say anything new, but I have to say thank you so much, Ty, to you and Nancy and all your friends, because this has been a wonderful event and you guys are wonderful hosts. And I, like Celine, also appreciated which we were not totally sure of, but worked out. So much for that. And I also really wanted to thank the staff. A huge amount of work for this meeting. You do a huge amount of work all the time, but it's been really outstanding, and we all really appreciate everything that you've done. It's fall in the valley, which means things are beautiful and wonderful. You guys may remember a guy named Travis Smith. This is the Rio Grande Reservoir that he's in charge of, that I think a lot of you have been to. So that was last week, and that's what it's looking like down there. Fall in the valley also means potato harvest. So people are pretty busy putting up their hay, and all the barley's already in the bins, and the quinoa, I think, is all harvested. And so Last stop is potatoes. I wanted to mention precipitation, since everyone else said the precipitation in Alamosa this year has totaled 8.69 inches, which is a lot because the average for this time of year is 4.83 inches. Sub-districts going. Enough can't be said about those guys. My next slide is which highlights in the I actually got to ride in a helicopter a couple of years ago, which was the coolest thing ever, and took this picture of it. While we are very excited that tomorrow the Rio Grande Forest the plan will be released, the draft of it anyway. And so it's been a great process of working with our partners at the Forest Service on their forest plan revision. And so I'm pretty excited to see what the draft final plan says. And I anticipate that it's going to all the good work that went into it and have priorities of taking care of watershed health depend on the watershed. Picture, this is Creed. So you may have read in the director's report that the flood section worked with the town of Creed. So in the report, it mentioned the flume that runs through town. This is the flume looking down toward town. The one
You and your wife, Nan, for having us into your home, and particularly to opening up your waters to us. I got to shake out my equipment, and Faiz were my new fish vest. And a high wind was very interesting. It worked out great with all those willow hedges, so that that willow cover really provided me some cover. And also thanks to Jackson County for putting on the reception last night. To all the people, I've heard a lot about them. I've met a few of them, but not as many as last night. Bad director, but I did meet characters. And I'm sure there are more behind the curtain somewhere. In roundtables, we've been building on our website also. We're just populating it. And we've got a pilot right now, but we're excited about it. I think we took some pointers from Gunnison also in terms of our website design. So thanks to your folks in the Gunnison for a good model template for us. So last week, our roundtable meeting, we had first readings for a grant application for River Park, park structure proposed by the city of Craig, and they've been invited back for a second application. We also had a proposal by a coalition of local river organizations, both upriver and downriver, as well as route to address leafing spurge infestations along the Yampa. Craig. This is a problem that's only getting worse. It's been noted in years, but it's really crowding out the pasture. We need a way to look at it. down to Maybell is right here. The ditch is the Maybell irrigation ditch. The Maybell headgate is down here in Little Juniper Canyon, up from Canyon. And from there it runs north side of the canyon, of the river rather, and then crosses over to the south side and runs along this yellow line, about 18 miles all the way of tailwaters at the Yampa River Sunbeam. It's a long ditch. One of the big problems they had is that they had to have a big flow and a big head to carry the water all that way. So they were bound to take really needed for their irrigation of the about 1,100 acres that they have out here. So they were, the effort was trying to box in and make this a more efficient operation, and to send back, make the ditch more efficient by lining the ditch by check dams to improve the delivery to the field so they didn't have to put so much of a head up at the end and divert so much water. We're going to look down here at the canyon area. This is the challenge. It's about a 400-foot scarp there in the canyon of the Little Juniper there, and about the same on the south side here, as you could see. And the head gate is located, and it runs along a large, the actual diversion itself are large blocks in the river pushed up. It dams up the river into a head gate here. There's a new flume that's been installed here. Measure and set what they're actually diverting. And the water flows down along this diversion, this canal here, which is made of in some places, hand-laid rock, a waste gate up here, and where it crosses over the river to the south side. This is actually a waste gate that was installed as part of this improvement, which is set open up when the water exceeds what the needs are downstream. This is at the mouth of the canyon. This is the flume. Water is carried across over to the south side. It's quite an escarpment down there just to get down. It's a rugged road. This is the diversion structure. As a lot of times they just sent a cat up on the hill and knocked down some boulders and placed them across the river like this into to pond up the water and divert it into the canal itself. There's a little farther shot. My right is downstream, which is where the and then there's a partial flume a little farther down to measure. That's a new structure. And then at the mouth of the canyon is the waste gate, which is operated by solar power. And there's a communications with the district. And that's a shot of the flume that's going across. That flume was rebuilt, and the ridge and let down by cables down so they could set it down in the position there. Shot again. So that's all I had on that. And Mr. Chairman, that's my report.
George.
Diversion structure slide. Right there. Well, it's pretty active at high water. In 2011, it was running fast. You couldn't tell the canal from the river at one point. Well, those are large rocks. Those rocks are probably the size of some of them are about the size of a good size bourbon or something like that. They're pretty, it's a structure. We go back one more. Those rocks are some of them 20 feet across. But it does present an obstacle for any boaters that come down. It's a real challenge at high water. This whole project was designed to try to keep more water, use less in the canal, and get the it's meant to work to reduce the tailwaters that are going reduce the amount of water that was going to go in the canal and miss the entire a mile river from where this diversion is down to the wastegate, but the position of the wastegate was really because of the danger of putting it up here where there's still large rock activity. You would have had to harden the site with probably $200,000 of a structure to vulnerable to rock falls in the area. So it was decided that they would install it at the mouth of the canyon, which would both help in the telemetry management of the overall management and meet the general objective of the project. That's all I have.
Thank you for that report, Director Gallagher. Questions for Director Gallagher? This time, that concludes our basin directors reports. And item number 21, nuisance update. I believe Michelle Garrison.
It's
right,
a monster.
Krieger.
Good morning, Michelle Garrison, CWCB staff. Thank you to Directors George and Randall for getting this discussion. From CPW today, we have Reed DeWalt, the Assistant Director for Wildlife and Natural Resources, and Doug Krieger, the aquatic, to give you an update on the discovery of the mussel villagers in Green Mountain Reservoir and what that means to the Aquatic Nuisance Species Program going forward, and on their efforts to secure some more long-term funding for this program after the loss of their Tier 2 7 tax funding, and an update on possible legislation. So with that, I will turn it to PW.
Mr. Chairman, directors, thanks for giving us some time to discuss this aspect with you today. My name is Doug Krieger. I'm the Aquatic Section Manager for CPW. Talk a little bit about the biology and some of the operational aspects of the program. And then when we get to the tough stuff, which is the finances, I'm going to off to Assistant Director Reed DeWalt. Our mission, with an emphasis on protecting our water resources in the state and everything connecting with it, really intersects well with of the board as well as DNR in general. You know, we try to prevent a number of different aquatic nuisance species, including water milfoil. It's represented here. Snails, rusty crayfish is an example. Is really on the program has been on zebra and quagga mussels, and so that's what we really want to focus on today. Most notably, we were mussel-free in this state for a while. January 1st, we were actually mussel-free after we delisted Pueblo Reservoir. So we had a little freedom there for a while, but unfortunately, this summer, the Bureau of Reclamation does their facilities. They came across in one of their tow net samples with found 12 veligers. That's the larval stage of quagga mussels reservoir. According to get confirmation on that, that's a genetic test, and we got that back, and was confirmed on the 25th of August. Let all our partners know they're involved. Quite a number of folks that are obviously have interest in this and the water connected to it. And then we did move to a containment protocol thereafter as well. Protocol, some details here, but basically boats coming off of the reservoir get additional scrutiny than they did before. Protocol, so most undergo a high risk before they leave, and also a decontamination if there's any water on that vessel at all. We've had some data. We've had a program there for quite a number of years, so we know where some of the boats go. Some of them are the top 5 waters are listed here in terms of where boating on Green Mountain, where else they go. So obviously they go far and wide. Those boats are, after they leave Green Mountain, now are identified with a special receipt to their inspection. So when those boats come into another water, they're easily identified. Green Mountain and should be handled in terms of having some risk coming from a containment water. Is what we call now suspect. So once we get one sample of veligers, that becomes suspect. We would need another independent sample, and again, genetic confirmation to move that to an actual positive water. Ours been sampling. We've done some intensive sampling now twice and have yet to find any other veligers. Be clear that we have not found any adults and just veligers at this time. One aspect that we think made this reservoir susceptible was the number of illegal launch sites. We have a restricted launch site that we want to use, that we do the boat inspections, but there's between the private land and Forest Service campgrounds, there was a number of illegal sites. Hatches on that a number of years ago, but people again have tried to do the easy things by getting their boat on the water. So those are being closed down, and we're trying to restrict the access where we can actually take a look at the boats before they get on the water. Situation isn't real new to us. This is the 8th reservoir that we've had in the state that have become suspect or positive for either zebra or quagga mussel veligers. There hasn't been any adults found. Waters, we found just mussel veligers one time. Reservoir was the exception where we found a number of years. Again, no adults have been found. It's really been our boat inspection program. I think it's been successful on keeping the continued inoculation of these larval stages. These larvae, once they get into the reservoir, they can grow to be adults, settle, but they reproduce sexually, so they have to, they have to be in close, females and males have to be in close proximity. And I feel that just, lowering the number of veligers and limiting the number of these critters have really prevented us from reaching that threshold where these things get together and are able to take over a reservoir. We've been good, knock on wood. They're still there. This is a map of distribution across the United States. Red being zebra and the green being quagga mussels. But these things are found from Manitoba to Mississippi in a wide variety of water conditions. We know exactly what those water conditions are, and we've monitored those. Us and the Department of Health have monitored those, and there's really no attribute in Colorado that's any different than what we see in all the rest of those positive waters. So we definitely feel that we're still susceptible in this state to getting an infestation. So far, we just have been able to prevent that with our program. And the risk is becoming even more increasing over time as more waters have been to the east of us and also to the southwest of us. It's hard to see the numbers, but the red states are the leading risk states, and obviously Arizona is very close to us, and that's where we're still seeing a lot of boats coming to Colorado, mussels attached to them. We intercept these boats. We've had 24 so far this year, but that already exceeds what we found last year, which was again a record for up to that point. So it's definitely a need to be vigilant in this program. So with that, I'll turn it over to Reed to talk a little bit about funding.
Just a question, Doug.
Sir.
Would you slide one more right there?
Okay.
The obvious thing that caught my eye is east versus west.
Right.
Is there a known explanation of why there's so much infestation close to the 100th meridian east of it, and so far not so much to the west?
That's correct. I think most of that's just a matter of time. So we had this infestations to the east, and like you mentioned, we had the 100th Meridian initiative in place for lots of years, where a line drawn that was trying to maintain everything to the east and protect the western states. That worked. But I think what's happened now is we have this leapfrogging. I think it worked for a while because of these things, if they're on a boat, desiccate. That even has veligers in it. That water evaporates, temperatures, humidity can dry these things out. And so I think for a long time, the boat moving from the east, just getting out to west, during that was able to, desiccate and dry up these little critters. Started leapfrogging to, across Missouri, across Nebraska, getting into Kansas. Then those hops became shorter and shorter, and I think it's just much more easy now to make those short distance hops.
Dr. Staub.
Some do and some don't. They don't have the intensity of the program that we have. We're one of the most, critical states in terms of the type of program we have. I'm looking at being on the boat ramps. So some of the states have almost given up. I know I've talked to the fish chief from Kansas here recently, and they're about to the point where they're just trying to protect their infrastructure as much as possible, but in terms of boat movement, free to go. And that's why, we feel that, this risk is coming from out of state now. We have to be there, vigilant on our boat ramps and making sure that we look at all the boats that are coming into our waters.
Other questions for Doug? Director Wells.
Considered stopping people at the highways, on the highways at the state line?
Yes, we have. Yeah, we've talked about that even when we first passed the first A&S bill in 2008. That was a consideration, but politically it didn't move into that bill. We have authority to make roadside stops. We have authority to do inspections on boat ramps, and that. But we've talked about that. Some states do have either a border program or a combination of it. Be a possibility. It's costly because of the infrastructure we'd have to put in place to make sure we have inspection stations. Concerns about trying to do that 24/7 in some fairly remote parts of the state. A large partner group of over probably 100 different agencies and water interests that are involved. We brought that to them as an option. We heard from them that they felt more comfortable on the boat ramps. It's real tangible. We know that we're getting 100% coverage of boats that are going on, and doesn't run the risk of having people run through an inspection station at the border and not knowing where that boat's going to end up at.
Other questions for Doug?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Over to Reed.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, everyone else. It's good to be in front of you again, as we were in front of you last winter. We appreciate your continued concern over this issue and allowing us to be here to all of you. About our...
If I could interrupt you for just a second, could you please identify yourself?
Oh,
for the
I'm
record,
sorry.
If you would, please.
I'm sorry. I thought I
Thank
did
you.
that. I'm Reed DeWalt, Assistant Director for CPW of our Wildlife and Natural Resources Branch. Just give you a quick review of where our program funding is and then possibly where we're going to head with some legislation this year. 2008, we had an A&S bill passed. It was Senate Bill 08226, which provided Tier 2 severance tax funding for our A&S for $4 million a year. And up until last year, with the BP decision, that was on the program. And thank you, Doug. What our program has been running in the past with contributions from our partners, many of them are in this room, and we're very thankful for those partners. We've been running about a $5 million program for the last few years to provide that continued enforcement and containment at, like Doug was talking about. With the BP decision in April of 2016, we pretty much lost that severance tax, that Tier 2 severance tax, and I think you remember where we were very concerned about the future of the program, and basically had zero funding going into this summer's boating season. Because of the general fund, we received there, and then some additional funding, over $1 million from our partners. We were able to stand up almost a full program this summer and once again provide a very effective program. It's unfortunate the Green Mountain hit shortly after all of these decisions were made. I don't know if we can attribute that to the reduction in funding, but it does in regards to that. So as we continue to look at the program going forward, to be concerned about a secure funding source to make sure this program doesn't lose the severance tax or any other funding source. So this year we're proposing some legislation, which I tell here, to secure that sustainable funding going forward. What we're looking at for this year would be an additional A&S fee on top of the registration that boaters already pay in Colorado to register their boats. And those are boats that are motorized boats currently or sailboats. Many of you are probably familiar with the boater registration fees that people pay in Colorado. And what we're looking at is an additional fee on top of those registrations, as well as creating a new fee. A new fee for out-of-state boaters. Currently, out-of-state boaters do not pay any sort of fee to come into Colorado to boat. And if you look at the threat, it's really an out-of-state threat. Those people should be paying for some of this program. So we're looking at a fee for out-of-state boats as well. So probably two new fees. And how we do that, we really haven't decided yet. Additional surcharge onto the registration fee or some sort of sticker, which we had talked about last year. I think the biggest difference this year that we're looking at is the fee will not go to boats which are exempt currently, things like canoes and kayaks and those type of boats. We're going to continue to exclude those boats this year. So that's a little bit different than what we presented last year. More closely at this fee, I guess, going forward, and what we would be asking for as well is for our Wildlife Commission to have authority to raise those fees with the Consumer Price Index going forward. Also expecting continued increases in the Tier 2 severance tax. Once the effects of the decision have been realized, we do expect severance tax to return at some level. And so, although the fees won't $5 million need for the program, we believe those Tier 2 severance tax funds will return, and we'll be able to stand up the full program as well. We've also talked to numerous partners about continuing to fund this program, and we have good support from our partners to continue to help, and we're very appreciative of that. Things that we're looking at that we need to do with this legislation would be to combine the separate parks and separate wildlife funds. We have two different A&S funds, and that's just a remnant from being two separate agencies. But combining those funds into one fund, it'll just make our operations easier to operate our A&S program. We're also looking at increasing penalties for people who violate these laws. Currently, the penalties are very minor, and people are willing to risk it. We've seen multiple cases where people who live in state that maybe vote out of state have brought back positive votes. By all our education enforcement efforts, they continue to want to bring these positive votes back to Colorado and not get them clean. And so it's not, I don't want to leave you with the impression that it's all out-of-state votes. It's actually part of about 50% of our problem is votes that are in the winter. Bring those boats home fully encrusted and try to launch on our waters. So it's an in-state problem as well. So we're looking at increasing penalties on those boats from a $50 to $100, increasing the fees from $150 to $500 if you knowingly bring A&S species into the state, which we have seen people doing, unfortunately. And then another piece of this legislation would be to CW to recover the cost of cleaning these positive vessels. One of the boats that we caught this summer was a houseboat, and it took 4 staff 2 weeks, 8-hour days, 4 staff for 2 weeks to fully clean that vessel. And that was sort of a gift we gave to that boater. And now we're looking at recovering those costs to make the agency whole again, and really start to enforce these laws so people get the idea. Colorado's serious about this. It's brought in, and people need to start taking it seriously as well. So where are we going with this bill? I think last year most of you saw that we tied it to the overall agency fee bill, or our sustainability bill, as some folks have known it as well. We're not looking at doing that this year. We're presenting this bill to the Interim Water Resources Review Committee, and they're currently considering this proposal I just outlined in front of you here. What we're needing from stakeholders and from the board, if possible, would be just continued support at that level to talk to the review committee and just encourage them to continue to look at legislation that would support our A&S program going forward. We're due to meet with them early next month, I believe it's the 6th of October, where they're going to consider this legislation, whether to move forward with it or not. Our goal is to have legislation ready to go the first day of session and hopefully pass legislation this year that would stand up the program. We also need to continue to encourage our federal partners, federal agencies partners to continue funding or to step up with increased funding as well. A lot of our funding goes to federal reservoirs, and we would love to see the federal government step forward and continue to increase their funding levels in Colorado. So with that, I think Doug and I we are open for any questions, whether it's for Doug or for myself, that you might have about strategy going forward or about A&S in general in Colorado.
Questions for Reed? I think we're good. Thank you very much. At this point in time, I would like to call on Director Randall. He can answer this better for us, but I'm making the strong assumption that we are 100% behind this program. So,
well, the department certainly is, and have been working closely with Reed and with Doug on the funding proposal and the legislation that's been discussed at the interim water committee. You know, we have real concerns about Tier 2 of the operational account of severance tax, and a $4 million generally fully funded is not a great way to run that program. And so, yeah, we've been working closely with CPW and potential sponsors.
Comments. Thank you, Reed. Thank you, Doug. Michelle, do we have a wrap up, or are we? No? Okay, great. Great. Thank you. Appreciate it. At this point in time, we're done with agenda item 1. Yeah, 21. There's some good news and bad news. The good news is I believe that brunch is probably ready. The unfortunate news is it's served that for board members and staff. So we should be back to continue agenda item number 22 at 11:15. That's Water Supply Reserve Fund grant applications. And we will be back at that time and continue with that. Thank you.
H, I, J, L, and M. And on that is Megan. She will be presenting A, F, and J. And then O with item.
Great. All right. Thank you,
That's
Mr.
true.
Chair. This is agenda item 22G. It is an action item and is a grant request recommended for approval by the Gunnison Basin Roundtable. The applicant and grantee is the Arch Ditch Association for the project titled Arch Ditch Headgate Improvement Project. The purpose of this application is to assist the Arch Ditch Association upgrade their water infrastructure. These upgrades include adding hydraulic power to an existing diversion structure headgate, existing wooden gate with a steel gate, addition of 2 new walkways, overlaying the lower skirt of the existing diversion structure with steel plating, of a trash rack. The Arch Ditch Association consists of 8 landowners that irrigate approximately 2,500 acres of hay and pasture on Tomichi Creek near Gunnison, Colorado. Approximately 7 miles long, is one of the largest ditches in the Gunnison area. The applicant is providing a $6,699 cash match, and all of the matching requirements have been satisfied. These issues have been identified. If approved, I will be CWCB's project manager. The applicant requests $20,096 from the Gunnison Basin account, and staff recommends approval. Unfortunately, the grant applicant was unable to attend today's meeting, but I'm available to take some questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have spoken with the Arch Ditch folks, and I suggested that a 9-hour drive for a 5-minute presentation probably wasn't productive when they're loading cattle today, and for not being here. They did ask me to pass along one additional feature of the project. On October 10th, they will have a visit from a engineer to see if they can work a fish passage into the project in addition. So, questions for Craig, I would move that we accept staff recommendation on this agenda item.
Moved by Director McLeod, second by Director Dutton, to move staff recommendation, agenda item 22G. Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by an aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is agenda item 22H. It is an action item and is a grant request recommended for approval by the Gunnison Basin Roundtable. The applicant and grantee is the Stewart Ditch and Reservoir Company for the project titled Upper Stewart Ditch Pipeline Project. This application is to assist the Stewart Ditch and Reservoir Company replace 15,000 feet of existing earthen canal, 243 feet of deteriorating existing concrete pipe, 1,500 feet of deteriorating existing corrugated metal pipe, 1,000 feet of pressure pipe on the Stewart Ditch. This include engineering and analysis, implementation of the habitat replacement plan, and NEPA construction, pipeline construction, and an A133 audit. The goal of these efforts are to reduce salt loading, reduce seepage, thus reducing agricultural water loss, and provide an opportunity for irrigators to install more efficient pivot sprinkler irrigation systems. Our company is privately owned by 245 shareholders representing approximately 2,700 irrigated acres. In the application package, the applicant has a grant proposal before the Bureau of Reclamation, which, if approved, will not be awarded until November of 2017. Therefore, it is staff's recommendation that the CWCB board conditionally approve this grant request contingent upon the applicant securing the Bureau of Reclamation grant. Parties are providing a cash and in-kind match of over $2.7 million, and all of the matching requirements have been satisfied. CWCB's project manager. The The applicant requests $20,500 from the Gunnison Basin account and $205,000 from the statewide account. And conditional approval contingent upon the applicant's successful grant request from the Bureau of Reclamation. I'm not sure if the applicant, Stan Irby, is here today. Sorry, got that mixed up. Carl Burns is here, and we're both available to take questions or address any concerns you may have.
Any questions for Craig? Carl, would you like to address the board?
Thanks for
If you, excuse me, sir, before you start, if you could please identify yourself for the record. Thank you.
Carl Burns, president of the Stewart Ditch and Reservoir Company. I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to look at our proposed project, and it is based on the simple fact if we can be successful with the Bureau to get funded, then we would use this money towards that project.
Questions for Carl. Director Yon.
So this is a pressure. This will be a pressurized pipe now for you, and then directly to your center pivot.
Yeah, we've already done our first phase, which was the lower end of our ditch, and we've had that in use for 4 years now, and this is to extend our pipeline up the ditch to benefit more users.
But do you still, when you get the water to your pivot, do you still need to pressurize it, like have a booster pump or something at the pivot?
We're going to eliminate. We're going to gain like 3 pounds for some places, so there's a benefit. It's just it takes time to get the project. Thank you.
Further questions for Carl? Thank you for making the trip over here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we adopt the staff recommendation subject to the condition in the recommendation.
Director McLeod to accept staff recommendation, agenda item 22H. Second by Director Gallagher. Further discussion? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by an aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is agenda item 22I. Is an action item and a grant request recommended for approval by the North Platte Basin Roundtable. T is the Lucky Penny Ranches LLC for the project titled Aquafria Reservoir Rehabilitation Project. The purpose of this application is to assist the Lucky Penny Ranch in their efforts to rehabilitate the Aquafria Reservoir. Which include the installation of a debris curtain upstream of the dam face, replacing the dam face with hand-placed rocks and grout, camera inspection of the outlet pipes to determine replacement needs, camera inspection of internal dam pipes to determine repair needs, necessary repair the pipe gate system, repair installation of the gauging system. These improvements will assist the applicant in meeting the requirements of the State Engineer's Office. Is used to irrigate hay meadows to produce very high quality mountain meadow hay for use by North Park cattle production. All needs have been identified. The applicant is providing a cash and in-kind match of $25,000, and all matching requirements have been satisfied. The CWCB's project manager. The applicant requests $75,000 from the North Platte Basin account, and staff recommends John and Sharon Harvat of the Lucky Penny Ranch and Dale Leach, their consultant, are in attendance today, and we're all available to take questions or address any concerns you may have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Questions for Craig? Sharon or John, would you like to address the board?
Hi, my name is Sharon Harvat, and thank you for considering our application today. We purchased the ranch in 1995, so we've had it that long, and as he said, irrigates roughly 700 acres directly and indirectly. It's 730 acre feet, and yes, it's in dire need of repair. If you have any technical questions, I'm going to refer that to Dale and Scott because, yeah, that's why we hired them.
Any questions for? Also, I see we have our district ranger with us today. Would you like to make some comments?
Jeremiah Zamora, District Ranger, Parks Ranger District of the Medicine Bow Route National Forest. The Harvats on a couple of different projects. They're very easy to work with. They invite us out, go with us, and meet us out there. We support them working on the ditch, or excuse me, that's not the ditch, on the dam, because we don't worry about things washing out. I did write them a letter explaining that we are working on a NEPA decision for a ditch bill easement, which will be signed by the regional forester. We're expecting that to happen this fall.
I think that takes care of it. Excuse me, Director Gallagher.
I don't know if there are any more questions. I would move to approve staff's recommendation.
Been moved by Director Gallagher to move staff recommendation 22I, second by Director McLeod. Do you have a comment, Director McLeod? No? Okay, thank you. Further discussion? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by an aye. Aye. Opposed? South Platte. Go ahead.
Third, this is agenda item 22K. It is an action item and a grant request recommended for approval by the South Platte Basin Roundtable. The applicant and grantee is the Pruder Learning Center Foundation for the project titled Water Education and Outreach. The purpose of this application is to assist the Pruder Learning Center Foundation to collaborate with the South Platte Basin Roundtable and Education and Outreach Committee and Education Coordinator to address the water supply gap and projects needed to reduce this gap for the gap. In discussion with the South Platte, they have expressed interest in improving their education and outreach activities, particularly around the water supply gap and options to reduce the gap. Roundtable members have suggested that working with the PLC to hone and share this common message is a priority, and agreed that the PLC facility is a location which they would like to create and build a long-term relationship. Another step will be for the PLC to meet with the new South Platte Roundtable Education Coordinator to determine what messages are to be delivered and understandings built upon. As an adapt the multiple education programs at PLC by working with the Roundtable Education Committee, developing the most effective strategies to disseminate and their children. CWCB staff will work cooperatively with the Pruder Learning Center Foundation to develop an acceptable statement of work, budget, and schedule that meets contracting requirements and will guide PLC in obtaining all matching letters of commitment. And third parties are providing a cash and in-kind match of approximately $211,000, and all matching requirements have been met. If approved, I will be CWCB's project manager. $9,979 from the South Platte Basin account and $40,000 from the statewide account, and staff recommends approval. Ray Schillard, director of the Pruder Learning Center, is in attendance today, and we're both available to take questions or address any concerns you may have.
Questions for Craig? Ray, would you like to speak this morning to the board?
Good afternoon. My name is Ray Schillard, the director of the Pruder Learning Center, preschool through postdoc facility. It's right between Greeley and Windsor on the Pruder River. Last year we saw over 33,000 students. We work primarily with the 5 school districts and 2 universities, CSU and UNC. We also have a large community program, and so we can share our application with you and have you look at it. Possibility of extending our reach through to the south is down to Brighton with this opportunity. So, any questions?
Questions for Ray? I'm sorry, Director Wells.
I don't really have a question. I just wanted to thank you for obtaining so much funding from such a diverse group of funders. That always makes me feel like it is, in fact, a true community effort. So I congratulate you on what you've been able to achieve.
Yeah, the Pruder Learning Center people were kind enough to come to our roundtable twice. So and now that we have a basin coordinator coming on board there directly with that person, whoever that person might be. And so they're doing a lot of good work there at the Poudre Learning Center. So we feel pretty fortunate to be able to kind of join with them on this education part, helping people understand water a little bit better. So this is a great opportunity for us to get the word out from our roundtable. So we just thank them for that. And with that, I would move approval item 20, what is it?
22K.
22K, thank you.
Been moved by Director Yon, second by Director Dutton to move agenda item staff recommendation, agenda item 22K. Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by an aye. Those opposed, motion carries.
This is agenda item 22L. It is an action item and a grant request recommended for approval by the Metro Roundtable and the South Platte Basin Roundtable. The applicant and grantee is the Open Water Foundation for the project titled South Platte Basin Roundtable Data Platform. The purpose of this application is to assist the Open Water Foundation to implement a web-accessible data platform that can be used by the South Platte Basin Roundtable and the Metro Roundtable members to facilitate the work of the roundtables. Utilize existing data sets and open technologies to implement processes to integrate data sets from multiple original sources. Visualizations will provide context and explain water resource issues in the South Platte. The project will focus on fundamental data sets such as lists of municipalities, water providers, ditch companies, and large industries in the basin, and data sets that provide insight on multifaceted water issues that evolve over time. Will be made available in forms usable by the statewide water supply initiative update, the basin implementation plans, and other projects. It will be implemented to emphasize important issues for each sector: recreation, environment, and municipal and industrial. The project will leverage previous and ongoing work from the Open Water Foundation and its collaborative and will be coordinated with other projects. The project will enhance the ability of the roundtable to tell its story to other roundtables and the public through the use of data-driven stories. It will result in an open platform that can be evaluated and enhanced. Staff will work cooperatively with the applicant to obtain all letters of matching commitment. Otherwise, no issues or additional needs have been identified. Parties are providing a cash and in-kind match of approximately $50,000, and all matching requirements have been satisfied. It will be CWCB's project manager. The applicant requests $20,000 from the Metro account, $20,000 from the South Platte Basin account, and $60,000 from the statewide account, and staff recommends approval. A technology officer is in attendance today, and we're both able to take questions or address any concerns you may have. Thank you.
Questions for Craig?
Craig, on the in the narrative, it says that up at the top of the item, it says that the applicant has $50,000 in kind. Funding summary at the end of the item, it shows a $46,000 grant from the Bechtel Foundation. The same contribution?
That is something that we still need to clarify. I've had some ongoing discussions with Steve, and I think he could probably address that more accurately than that. But be assured that before we contract, we'll have those details ironed out and all the matching requirements. Steve?
Yeah. Steve Mahlers, Open Water Foundation. So the situation is we had a $50,000 grant from Bechtel on a previous project that is applicable. We also have in-kind services that we can put in. I was basically saying we have more than enough match, I guess. And we also have a new WaterSmart grant with Bureau of Reclamation. $1,000 is our share. There would be a new project that would qualify for match as well. So I think we're covered.
Questions for Steve? You bet. Absolutely.
So one thing I want to emphasize, I find it interesting that a lot of the education things might have a good intersection with what we want to do, because as we make data sets more, we can explain water issues. That will help whether it's STEM education or the public understand. And so we also want to work with the reach folks that are being brought on for the South Platte Metro, and what we do, I think, will scale to the state. So this is the first step in moving to that direction.
Questions for Steve? Thank you for being here today. Director Young.
I would move approval of item 22L, a staff recommendation on item 22L.
Been moved by Director Young, staff recommendation 22L. By Director Wells. Further discussion? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by an aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
This is agenda item 22M. It is an action item and a grant request recommended for approval by the South Platte Basin Roundtable. The applicant and grantee is the Wildland Restoration Volunteers for the project titled Post-Flood Source Water Protection. The purpose of this application is to assist wildland restoration volunteers to work with multiple partners in the Big Thompson, Little Thompson, Left Hand, James Creek, and St. Vrain drainages to control sediment, control products, planting healthy native riparian plant communities across 16 acres, and removing tens of thousands of tamarisk saplings across 20 acres spanning 2.2 miles of stream. Project include improved source water quality by stabilizing channels using a variety of cutting-edge technologies, by revegetating 16 acres of riparian corridor using professional labor, volunteers, and demonstrated revegetation expertise, hazards and decreased likelihood of property damage by future floods, educate volunteers about water quality and conservation, and other goals of the South Platte Basin Roundtable, and search and remove invasive phreatophytes from approximately 20 acres. We'll work cooperatively with the applicants to develop a scope of a statement of work, budget, and schedule that conforms to contracting requirements, and we'll coordinate with the applicant in obtaining the required letters of matching commitment. Third parties are providing a cash and in-kind match of approximately $407,000, and all matching requirements have been satisfied. CWCB's project manager, the applicant requests $25,000 from the South Platte Basin account and $25,000 from the statewide account, and staff recommends approval. The wildland restoration, the watershed restoration coordinator for volunteers is in attendance today, and we're both available to take questions or address any concerns you may have. Thank you.
Questions for Craig? Would you like to address the board this morning?
Thank you very much for having me here today. My name is Luke McNally. I'm a project manager for Wildlands Restoration Volunteers, and we're a local nonprofit organization that implements a variety of ecological restoration and bank stabilization projects throughout Colorado Front Range and the Western Slope and a little bit into Wyoming. The purpose of this grant is to match funds that were secured from some other grants and fee-for-service arrangements with our agency partners to get more work done in the flood-impacted area in Larimer and Boulder counties. Approach is to work with our construction contractor partners and engineering firm partners to install erosion control products such as wood straw mulch, coir mat, like compost, and fertilizer products to help riparian plants to establish themselves and plant a variety of native vegetation to stabilize innovative bank stabilization, soft armor techniques, alternatives to riprap and more traditional bank stabilization methods. Our goal is to improve water quality and reduce sediment in streams and restore river channels so that they're more resilient to future flooding. And we also invite the public to participate in these projects as volunteers, so it's very transparent, public mind's eye of how these dollars are being spent, because they get to be out there on the ground and tangibly implement these projects with their own two hands. So there's definitely an educational component as well. Certainly like to thank CWCB for all the excellent work that you've done over the past few years in the flood recovery effort. We've been working with CWCB since before the floods, and a hell of a shop, and has been a tremendous friend to WRV over the years. So we really appreciate working with you guys, and I think our flood recovery effort in this state has gone a lot better than it has in some other states, and so that's a tremendous accomplishment that we should all feel pretty good about.
Luke. Director Wells.
I want to compliment you as well. This is a very impressive list of donors, from municipalities to the Forest Service to the Boulder Preparatory Academy. I just think it's a very a group of people, a lot of in-kind contributors and cash match, and clearly people are motivated to help in this effort of flood recovery. So
thank you very much, Director Wells. I hope you guys have the opportunity to maybe come out and see some of our project sites, or at least see some pictures. Some of them are looking quite good.
Further questions for Luke? Appreciate it.
Very much.
Director Yon.
Yeah, this is a great project and in a flood-ravaged area, especially. So this is this many partners joining together to do something good on a river. With that, I would recommend move staff recommendation on item 22M.
By Director Yon, second by Director Wells, to move staff recommendation 22M. Further discussion? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by an aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chair, and now Megan Holcomb will present agenda items 22A.
Okay, for the record, I'm Megan Holcomb, Water Supply Planning Section, and I will be presenting items 22A, F, and J. 22A is an action item and is a grant request recommended for approval by 3 basin roundtables, the Gunnison, the Yampa White, and Southwest Basins. The applicant and grantee is the John McConnell Math and Science Center for the project titled Advancing K-12 Water Education in Western Colorado. With this project from the March board meeting. In March, CWCB previously awarded this project $25,000 from the Colorado Basin Fund. The McConnell Center has now traveled to and received support from all 4 West Slope roundtables. SRF amounts correspond to each basin's proximity to and thus expected utilization of the center. They postponed their statewide request of $100,000 due to the statewide account shortfall. If all basin and statewide asks are supported today, contributed $175,000 in WSRF grants towards a $5.5 million statewide education facility. The application thus is to help fund the new and expanded John McConnell Math and Science Center on Colorado Mesa University campus. The new center will include classrooms, halls, including a permanent 400 square foot interactive water exhibit. This gift, the center would like to put each contributing roundtables in the CWCB's name on the hydrology exhibit. As a focal point of the building, the interactive water table with multiple hands-on and 15,000 visitors a year, and demonstrate principles of hydrology, river dynamics, the water cycle, agricultural and municipal use, conservation, and water law of all ages to enjoy and learn. The CWCB's investment in this project will allow the center to house other exhibits demonstrating principles of math, life, earth, and physical science as they relate to water, offer classroom space, field trips from within and outside Grand Valley for guided exploration, and expand outreach including after-school programs, camps, community events. Applicant meets and exceeds all matching requirements and no additional needs or issues have been identified. Of up to $25,000 from the Gunnison Basin, $15,000 from the Yampa Basin, $10,000 from the Southwest Basin, and up to $100,000 from the statewide account. If approved, I will serve as CWCB's project manager. Kit, an executive director of the Math and Science Center, is in attendance and would like to give a brief update on the center. Do you have this? Okay, that's great. She would like to answer any questions you might have.
First, are there any questions of Megan? Please, Jen, we're ready for you.
Our Executive Director of the John McConnell Math and Science Center, thank you all so much for having me here today.
this new exhibit in the new center we're really excited about. To date, to catch you up to speed, we've raised $2.1 million towards our $5 million goal, and we're hoping to reach 2.5 by the end of October campaign and start applying for grants across foundations on the Front Range. The water exhibit, to catch you up on that, is under construction. The acrylic cylinder, which is the chandelier of the Math and Science Center, it's an 8-foot diameter cylinder being mounted 10 feet in the air, and the water flows out of that into these panels that kids get to play with, open and close head gates, and there's a cameo roller dam and a water wheel and all kinds of fun activities for kids. It's being printed right now at Reynolds, and I should be able to see it tomorrow. So it's all quite exciting. We can't wait for it to open. To be on CMU's campus is unprecedented, and the Math and Science Center isn't prepared for the influx of guests and activity. I had the Gunnison Basin Roundtable visiting last week. They walked through, and they're figuring out busing and how they can get more kids from the Gunnison Basin that come to the Math and Science Center annually, but they are trying to figure out how they can maximize that. The same result when I was up in the Yampa. We have kids from Hayden and Meeker that come down, and all the way down to Nucla, Natarita, Norwood, and Silverton. And so the Southwest is also on board, and they're trying to figure out ways to get kids. We're going to now be hosting summer camps overnight on the CMU campus from across the Western Slope. Can come to hydrology summer camp and learn with us. So we're really excited about the opportunity, and thanks again.
Well, great. Further questions for Jen? Director Young.
Can East Slopers come too?
There is a Trans Mountain diversion in the water exhibit. As long as you're okay with that, not all your kids are welcome to come. I did about that tunnel out loud.
Director George.
If there's no further discussion, I would move that we adopt staff recommendation on agenda item 22A.
Been moved by Director George, second by Director Hawkins, to move staff recommendation 22A. Director Gallagher.
I just want to recognize Jen. I know that our basin was very excited with your presentations to us last winter, I think it was, and that you came all that way in the winter weather, and we were very enthusiastic supporters of it. So thank you very much for making this happen.
Any other discussion? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by an aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Just go pick her family up in Grand Junction. 22F is an action item and a grant request recommended for approval by the Colorado Basin Roundtable. The applicant and grantee is Missouri Heights Mountain Meadow Irrigation Company for the project titled Missouri Heights Mountain Meadow Irrigation Ditch Lining Phase C. The is to help fund the irrigation company's efforts to improve the condition of 5,800 feet of ditch that currently seeps about 7 CFS of irrigation water from Cattle Creek to Spring Park Reservoir in Garfield County. The ditch below the reservoir loses as much as 30% of the water in the ditch due to seepage through the coarse and rocky soils. Mountain Meadow Irrigation Company wants to install a 24-inch plastic pipeline to make a permanent fix of this section. Proposed work would take place in the fall of 2017 when the ditch is not in use. Objectives of this project include an overall increased efficiency of the delivery system through a reduction in water loss due to seepage and hydrophytic vegetation, and a reduction in annual maintenance working costs. The ditch lining project may result in 630 acre-feet per year in efficiency savings. The applicant is providing a cash and in-kind match of $408,000, which is 91% of the total project cost, and they otherwise meet all matching requirements. We funded $50,000 for phase 1, the construction of a concrete water control structure and the lining of 3,500 feet in ditch with plastic pipe, which was completed in November 2014. The applicant requests Colorado Basin account, and staff recommends approval. cooperatively with the grantee to finalize a project budget and schedule that meets the needs of the applicant and the state. If approved, I will serve as CWCB's project manager and happy to take any questions regarding this project. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Director George.
If there are no questions, I move that we adopt staff recommendation on item 22F.
Motion by Director George, second by Director Dutton to move staff recommendation 22F. Further discussion? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by an aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Agenda item 22J is an action item and is a grant request recommended Grand Basin Roundtable. Grantee is the Colorado Rio Grande Restoration Foundation, 5 ditches, Rio Grande diversion, and headgate improvements. The purpose of this application is to assist 5 ditch companies facing issues of aging and inefficient infrastructure and to contribute towards efforts of stream bank stabilization adjacent to each ditch location. The 5 Ditches project is a structural project that will improve the ability of the Rio Grande to meet consumptive and non-consumptive needs, fully functioning diversions and headgates for 5 ditches, stabilizing stream banks, and increasing the ability of the river to transport water. As such, the project will address agricultural, environmental, recreational, and water administration needs. The 5 ditches include the Consolidated Ditch, the Pace Ditch, San Luis Valley Canal, Centennial Ditch, and Rio Grande No. 2 Ditch. They're off the Rio Grande to irrigate a combined 35,906 acres of agricultural land. The Rio Grande No. 2 diversion and headgate, ditch, diversions and headgates, the San Luis Valley Canal headgate, and the Centennial Ditch diversion, and will also stabilize a total of 3,500 stream bank miles. Each ditch company will benefit from improved efficiency and reduced maintenance, enhance water quality by reducing sediment input, improving riparian conditions, improving aquatic life and wildlife habitat, recreation and community safety by ensuring diversions are passable by fish and boats where appropriate. The ditch companies and NRCS are providing a combined cash and in-kind match, $35,500, which is 231% of the statewide request of $882,000. As you've heard yesterday in agenda item 15C, the Centennial Irrigation Ditch was approved for a $200,000 loan for their diversion replacement project. And Headgate Company was also approved for a CWCB loan in the July board meeting in the order of $1 million. Request from the Rio Grande Basin account and $882,000 from the statewide account, and staff recommends approval. No additional needs or issues have been identified. Hernandez will be CWCB's project manager for these combined loan grant projects. Yesterday received an email with 4 letters as a supplemental to this WSRF application. Thank to Director Dutton, who can address these letters in roundtable's discussion, as well as the unanimous support of this important project.
Again, I wanted to share with the board a little bit or kind of discuss the letters that we received. So in an email from Andrew yesterday, you should have gotten 3 letters and then another one this morning. So 2 of the letters were from Steve Massey, who is the landowner in the valley. The first of Mr. Massey's letters was sent to the Rio Grande Roundtable before their consideration of this project. He was not in attendance at the roundtable, but he asked a local attorney to come read the letter. So after the presentation of the grant request, there was a very lengthy discussion of his letter and the points he raised before the members of the roundtable voted on the project. The support for the project was unanimous, with 1 member abstaining, as he is the president of one of the ditch companies that will be benefited. The roundtable chair, Nathan Coombs, then sent a letter to Mr. Massey that was also included for your review so that you can see how the roundtable wanted to address the points that Mr. Massey raised. The 4th letter is from Wild Earth Guardians, and they sent a letter of concern about this project yesterday afternoon. Their concerns center around the Rio Grande chub and then the proposed designs of the dams for this project. Meeting the area wildlife manager for Parks and Wildlife, Rick Basagoisha, got up and talked about the status of the chub. And so a little background here, upstream of one of the ditches, the consolidated ditch, about a mile, maybe a little more than a mile, there were some Rio Grande chub that were discovered late last summer. Parks and Wildlife was not completely sure about the origin of this chub. These chubs, they stock chub in the Rio Grande. They don't usually stock them in this exact location, and so there was some questions about if they were stock chub that had migrated or if they were Aboriginal chub that had been there all along. And DNR worked with the ditch company who was planning to remove an old diversion dam, again upstream of the project area, that ditch company just hold their horses and let CPW have the chance to the area and determine what the genetic makeup of these chubs is. And so they sampled, I think, twice, maybe 3 times this year. So far they have been able to collect 19 fish, 19 chub. They need 30 to do a genetic analysis and determine the population genetics of the chub. And so I think they were planning to go out there. If they haven't gone out last week, I think it's very soon they were going to try for the 3rd time to get that 30 so that they could assess if they determine that the chub are hatchery chub, they'll just leave them alone. They're out there. If they determine that they are Aboriginal and have original Rio Grande genetics, they'll shock them and gather them up and move them to the hatchery to serve as brood stock. So the chub, again, the local irrigators have been very cooperative in helping Parks and Wildlife and projects so that CPW could do what they need to do. Wildlife manager, again, Mr. Basagoisha, emphasized that the 5 Ditches project would not negatively impact the chub and that these types of projects are good for fish in the area. The concerns raised by Wild Earth Guardians about the fish passage for the new diversions, I would note that Emma Resor, who's the executive director of the foundation, who's here today, and the ditch companies have worked very closely with their engineers and with the local Parks and Wildlife fish biologists to ensure that the fish passage included in these structures is appropriate for CPW's management objectives. Those are my comments about the letters. Pass it to Bob if you wanted to make some comments. Director Randall.
Questions for either Director Dutton or Megan? I'll call on Director Randall.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Dutton, for the explanation. I'll echo all of that, and that sort of comports with my understanding of how things have gone. I got involved in this last fall when Wild Earth Guardians brought to our attention the discovery of chub on this section, and it raised questions about the removal of the McDonald Ditch Company's dam on the river. We are very interested in conserving populations of Rio Grande chub on the river. That is just sort of table stakes for us. It's we'd like to improve habitat. We want to see the fish preserved. We've been actively engaged in conservation of the species and will continue to do that. Discovery of individual fish was brought to our attention. We went and worked with and the adjacent landowner to really ask them if they would wait and allow us time to come back in the spring and try to see if there were more fish there and to do the genetic testing that Director Dutton referred to. That time of year, the river was frozen over. The fish are really fragile. If you could find them, you could kill them in just doing what it would take to do that analysis. So I really just want to acknowledge McDonald Ditch Company and the landowner's willingness to work with us on that. This was a circumstance where we were asking them and not telling them, and they were willing to accommodate that. That the sampling has occurred over the course of the summer, that additional fish have been found, and that will continue. Where, you know, I'm really relying on the local expertise, Rick and others there, both in terms of conservation of the fish and design of the structures. And they feel like those are both things that they've been able to work through here and would support this. So just kind of wanted to share the perspective of the department and our involvement in this.
Director Randall. Well, thank you for those comments, Director Randall. Thank you for your comments, Director Dutton. Emma, would you like to address the board this morning?
About the Centennial. I wanted to, the 5 Ditches project is years of planning and collaboration between these 5 ditch companies, state and federal agencies, other local nonprofit organizations, and area landowners. The planning for this project really goes back before my time with the restoration project. So, it's been a long process. It's really exciting to be at this point where we have these ditch companies coming together and working collaboratively. It really seeks to address the issues facing each ditch company in a holistic manner, looking at the issues facing each location and trying to approach it in a way that addresses each of the unique needs. Each of the ditches, like Heather was saying, have been developed in collaboration with and with CPW and other. Trout Unlimited has been really helpful to ensure that each of these diversions best meet the needs of both the ditch company as well as the fishery and the riparian areas surrounding. Just wanted to recognize each of the ditch companies for their all they've invested in these projects and their own cash up front. It's that they've given to this project, and it's really exciting to be at this point. They want to do what's right both for their operations as well as for the river. Thank you so much for your consideration of this project, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions for Emma. Director Wells.
Yes, Emma, I'm not sure that that I should direct the question to you. Maybe there's someone here from CPW, but I would like to understand, based on the Miller Ecological Letter, issue, at least for the author of this comment letter, was the consolidated ditch passage or natural, which just wondered what to that is having a concrete fish passage which may not allow native fish to move upstream.
Sure. Well, we worked with the Consolidated Ditch Company over many years to try to come up with the best solution for their diversion, and we looked at some more natural solutions, but the ditch company ultimately decided that they wanted to go with a concrete diversion dam, and CPW through what would be the best solution to addressing issue, and encouraged us to go forward with the fish ladder that is in the design. I think that there may be some opportunities still to add in, perhaps putting in some rock on the bottom of the fish ladder to help more accessible to more diversity of species. So that's something that I think there's still plenty of opportunity to modify the fish ladder at this point. I think we'll revisit.
Further questions for Emma? Thank you for the trip up. Director Dutton.
If there aren't any other questions, I would like to disclose that I am an unpaid volunteer board member on Emma's board. And so just so that's out in the open, I will not get any benefits from this project, but I am on her board. But yeah, at this time, I would move that we support staff recommendation for this item.
Director Dutton, second by Director Hawkins to move staff recommendation 22J. All those in favor, or call for the vote. All those in favor signify by an aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, Ben Wade, CWCB staff. I'll be presenting agenda items 22B through 22E. I've been instructed by Eric Skive. If I don't hurry up, my mic's going to get cut. Agenda 22B is an action item. This is a grant request recommended for approval by the Arkansas Basin Roundtable. Applicant is the Beaver Park Water Incorporated for the project titled Upper Canal Lining Removal and Replacement. And the purpose of this application is to remove failed concrete sections of the Beaver Park Water Upper Canal, replace them with new concrete, up to 1,200 linear feet at this time, or as much as the money can go. The applicant estimates that the total water efficiency savings from this proposed water activity is about 1,100 acre feet per year. And this savings will be used to increase the availability of water supplies for Beaver Park Water, water deliveries to Penrose Water District, and increase typical storage levels in Brush Hollow Reservoir. The removal and replacement of this canal lining does support the agricultural measurable objective in the Colorado Water Plan, maintaining agricultural viability and productivity, as well as supporting rural economies and food security. And then by reducing the ditch canal seepage losses, this helps to fulfill the critical action, support agriculture, conservation, and efficiency. No other additional needs or issues have been identified. Rose District are contributing $37,500 of matching funds. That's $40,000 from the Arkansas Basin account, $750 from the statewide account. Staff recommends approval. Be the project manager for this application is Jack Tyler, the Vice President of Beaver Park Water, our consulting engineer Steve Kastner, and they would like to make a few remarks as well as answer any questions that the board may have. Thank you.
And at this time. Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here today, consulting engineer for Beaver Park, Jack Tyler, Vest Board. Previous life, I spent 25 years with the state engineer's office, mostly in the Arkansas, so I'm familiar with this company. Beaver Park irrigates about 3,500 acres of land. Their water is derived from the south side of Pikes Peak, off of Beaver Creek. Their goal is to maintain small-scale agriculture, 5, 10, 20-acre farms. But unfortunately for the company, they have a lot of infrastructure for their size. This grant will allow them to gain some ground instead of just treading water, drifting further behind on maintenance and repairs. So that's what it's about. I know Jack can talk about what it means to the company a little more. As far as getting to this process, I'd just like to Jack of this board for his support, and also Gary Barber and Chelsea Nutter of the Arkansas Roundtable to this point in the process. Thank you.
Steve. Hearing none, Jack, would you like to address the board?
Jack Tyler, Vice President, Beaver Park Water, Penrose. We're a community of about 7,000 people between Canyon City and Pueblo. Said we irrigate about 3,500 acres. We have 500 shareholders. We have big pipe, 5 or 10 miles of canal pipeline. So we have different types of, and a reservoir, 4,000 foot, 8-foot reservoir, Brush Hollow. A lot of things to maintain and take care of for consideration. Thank you.
Any questions for Jack? Okay. Director Goebel.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And thank you to Jack and Steve for making the trip up here. We have these rules in the Arkansas Basin, irrigation improvement rules. So whenever you line a canal, typically you have to replace the return flows. But this canal rules because it was lined prior to October 1st of 1999. So so the actual savings is real, I guess, in that sense. And if there's no other further discussion, I move to approve staff's recommendation on agenda item 22B.
Director Goebel, second by Director Yon, to move staff recommendation 22B. Further discussion? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by an aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 22C is another action item. The grant request recommended for approval by the Arkansas River Basin Roundtable Coalitions and Collaboratives, Inc. They also go by COCO. They're applying for the Arkansas River Watershed Collaborative. Application is titled Arkansas Basin Watershed Health Initiative. And if the board remembers, this was back in March of 2015, this board had approved WSRF grant, Arkansas River Watershed Collaborative. So this is just an ongoing project. The objectives laid out for the Watershed Collaborative in this application are to work with the Lower Ark Water Quality Working Group on at least 3 on-farm soil health and improved irrigation demonstration projects below Pueblo Reservoir, coordinating education and outreach with the PEPO Committee for Watershed Health purpose, across the basin. They'll be working with at least 5 water utilities and/or conservancy districts to prioritize and input utilities or district infrastructure into the federal wildfire decision support system. I'll also be assisting and helping to assisting and supporting in the development of at least 2 in the Ark Basin. And finally, to incorporate the Arkansas River Watershed Collaborative into a nonprofit organization, pursue 501c3 designation, and as the application states, to build governance and capacity for both Watershed Collaborative and Sub-Basin Collaborative. This project proposal continues to help implement the Arkansas Basin Implementation Plan, to BEF and the Colorado Water Plan, which is the watershed health creation goal, just through supporting the enhancement of environmental recreation economic values, protecting healthy environments, promoting protection and restoration of water quality in critical watersheds. Other issues have been identified. COCO is providing a cash match of $400,000, meets all other matching requirements. $23,000 from the Arkansas Basin account, $1,000 from the statewide account. Staff recommends approval. If approved, I will be the CWCB's project manager. The applicant wasn't able to make it today, so going along with Craig's baseball analogies, pinch hitting today is the Arkansas BIB coordinator, Gary Barber, and he'll be available to answer any questions that the board may have.
For Ben first. Don't believe so. Welcome, Mr. Barber.
Barber, Arkansas Basin Implementation Plan Coordinator. Our Arkansas River Watershed Collaborative was an outgrowth of our basin plan where we formed a watershed health working group. And our sense was that by inviting the state and federal agencies to participate, we would learn a lot about how they view watershed health. One of the things we learned was that if municipalities put their infrastructure that was critical to them into the state, the firefighting database. The meeting we had, they basically said, we fight fires, not a fire. And so if you're in our database and we know what's critical for you, that informs our decision about how we proceed. So ultimately we came up with a little graphic called the Wheel of Fire, how you respond to fire, but also how you get out ahead of it. Carla Curious is the manager of the Arkansas River Watershed Collaborative. She's brought some significant match dollars from federal sources, projects, and they were also working on some stream and management plans. It's been a good program for us. The executive committee of the Arkansas Basin Roundtable serves as the guiding force, if you will, for the
glad to answer any questions.
Questions for Gary?
Gary, I was trying to find in the materials, what is coalitions and collaboratives?
Collaborative Inc. was an outgrowth of the Coalition for the Upper South Platte, being strongly encouraged by the Pike and San Isabel National Forest to come into the Arkansas and help us after the Waldo fire. It was the only outfit in town that could really do the restoration work that was needed was CUSP. So my understanding from talking to Carol is this board reminded her that the S&P stand for South Platte, and that if she wanted to do things in the Arkansas, she needed a separate entity. So Collaborative, or COCO, is an entity that's underneath CUSP that helps facilitate and try to help local Arkansas watershed groups or other watersheds in the state and operate. So right now it's the same people, the same administration. We think that Arkansas River Watershed Collaborative is going to go to a full 501c3 status. We've got bylaws where the executive committee will be the board, but for right now, COCO is a management entity to try to help oversight of fledgling watershed groups.
Director Wells.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. Denver Water does a lot of work with CUSP, and they do a lot of really good work. So now that I understand, thank you.
Gary. Thank you. Director Goebel.
I've been fortunate enough to see some of Carol's work firsthand with fire recovery, and it's pretty impressive. And this RWIC group has been a good thing for the Arkansas Basin, and they seem to do quite a bit with the money they have. As you can see, this is quite the list of projects. And so with that, I would move to approve staff recommendation on agenda item 22C.
Motion by Director Goebel, second by Director Dutton to move agenda item 22C. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by an aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
D, an action item, is a grant request recommended by approval by the Arkansas Basin Roundtable. The applicant is the Huerfano County Water Conservancy District for the project entitled Arkansas Basin Implementation Plan Coordinator. Within this scope of work, the BIP coordinator will continue to just conduct outreach to entities who have identified needs, like the resources to move those projects forward. So the BIP coordinator works on their behalf to bring those project proponents project completed. BIP coordinator will also identify and coordinate WSRF as well as non-WSRF funding alternatives for various projects. Be maintaining and updating the basin needs database, as well as recommending projects for phase development to the Arkansas Basin Executive Committee for addition to the master needs list. The BIP coordinator also coordinates with a PEPA working group, Arkansas River Watershed Collaborative, Arkansas River Basin Water Forum, and will continue to do that under this scope of work. Excuse me. The continuation of this coordinator role directly supports Objective G in the water plan, which is funding, which states develop near-term funding opportunities whereby the smallest amount of funding possible has the greatest benefit as water plan. No other issues or additional needs have been identified. Per the guidelines, per the grant guidelines for the WSRF program, the applicant is not required to provide a match. They request $50,000 from the Arkansas Basin account and $25,000 from the statewide account. Staff recommends approval. If approved, I will be the CWCB's project manager. And again, Gary's here to, Gary, who is the BIP coordinator, is here to answer any questions about this project.
Questions for Ben? Gary. Oh, I'm sorry, Director Hawkins.
Question. On the summary sheet, there's an indication that it does not meet the minimum match. Is that incorrect?
No, they just flipped the basin request and the state right request. A project coming out of the basin's BI implementation plan, they need to request 66.7% of the basin funds, and 33.3% needs to come from statewide, and they had that flipped. And so that was an egregious error on my part to put in does not meet. They do currently meet the requirements. So my apologies. Handouts were passed out by Andrew, and thanks to Heinz for printing those out this morning.
Further questions for Ben? Can we go ahead, Gary?
Arkansas Basin Implementation Plan Coordinator. Since a few of you might not have read our Arkansas Basin Plan, I'll just tell you real quickly what we did with our database was took an approach of problem, solution, plan of action to implement the solution. And so we built a database of projects where you're either a concept, planned, implementation ongoing, or completed. So, for example, and I'll come to it next because I'd like to tell you about this Trinidad project, based twice. Once from a local watershed group and once from the ditch company, or the city of Trinidad. What we do as basin coordinator is to try to pull all those different folks together and see how much money we can leverage. So that's really the objective, and we're asking for a third year.
Gary, thank you.
Chairman, and this BIP coordinator position has kind of evolved as we've added a PEPO coordinator and as the needs assessment committee is and I think it's a good model. Good project, or a lot of times good projects that just don't have the means to get them off the ground. That's a big part of what Gary's role is to get these projects going and provide leadership to these groups, and so I think it's worked well. Discussion, I move to approve on agenda item 22D.
Motion by Director Goebel, Director Yon, to move staff recommendation 22D. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by an aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Agenda item 22E is an action item and is a grant request recommended for approval by the Arkansas Basin Roundtable. The applicant is the Purgatory Watershed Partnership, Trinidad River Walk Improvement Project. The applicants are not only seeking WSRF funding for this particular project, but they will be coming in to apply for Colorado Water Plan grant funding, as well as watershed restoration funding. And those applications will be coming in October 1st for the Water Plan grant and November 1st for the program. This particular WSRF request would just be to fund the administration of the project, which would be a task, and this just to basic project management, invoicing, coordinating the monthly meetings that are going to take place with this for this project. A conditional approval, and I'll get to that in just a second, and that was recommended by the Arkansas Basin Roundtable. The entire total project is $150,000. Not quite sure exactly what they'll be requesting in the future, but some of those objectives in that overall project would be the removal of non-native invasive plant species in certain reaches of the Purgatory River project area, following the removal of those invasive species to enhance some fishing activities at their proposed site, as well as recreation and education. Recreational uses within that area will to fishing, floating, bird watching, and then public access to the stream side. This project is consistent with the initiatives identified in the Basin implementation plan for multi-partner, multi-benefit project. Project is consistent with key action items, goals, and measurable objectives identified in Colorado's water plan, specifically Objective F, watershed health, environmental, and recreation, as well as Objective A, supply-demand gap. The applicant, so again, this request is only funding the administrative task. They do provide a match, not only Purgatory Watershed Partnership, but some other third parties, in-kind match of $10,700, and that does meet the matching requirements. Request $14,300 from the Arkansas Basin account. In the support letter, the Arkansas Basin Roundtable has put a condition on this proposal, and that would be the staff recommends conditional approval of this grant, contingent upon the applicant being awarded water plant grant funds and watershed restoration program funds, or a combination of those two programs. Project manager, and once again, Gary Barber, who will be available to answer any questions on the project. He's been working with this applicant for quite some time. Questions? Thank you.
Questions for Ben? Gary?
Basin Plan Coordinator. We started last fall in a group setting. In 2009, the Trout Unlimited and the city of Trinidad did some habitat restoration through the reach of the city. In 2016, the ARC Roundtable and you all approved a grant for restoration of historic headgates along. This project includes the Purgatory Conservancy District, the City of Trinidad, the Purgatory Water Partnership, Trout Unlimited, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, Baca Pico Wire Ditch Company, and for called the Puerto de Colorado, as downtown Trinidad is going through a revitalization that sits right on the interstate. They're going to move the Welcome Center there, and it sits right on top of the ditch company's headgate. Opportunity for education and for folks to interact with the river, the Soil Conservation District, and the Tamaris Coalition. So the project is to remove species and maintain those, restore the banks of the river, put in habitat for fish. So it includes a low flow winter water program to try to maintain the fishery because the Conservancy District does for stock ponds. City of Trinidad has some water that it owns that it could release. So we've been meeting monthly and trying to stitch this thing together. Craig for changing the form of the Water Supply Reserve Account grant. I wish I'd known he was going to do it before I filled the whole thing out for this grant, but we were able to. This is an example of a project where we're hoping to have Water Supply Reserve funds, perhaps Colorado Water Plan funds. We kind of got shifted over. We're working with Chris Sturm in the Watershed Health and Restoration. Flow could be a stream management plan. And then the private developer and the City of Trinidad are going to go for a GOCO mini grant to make it into a park, because a lot of the land is already owned by the city. And then all to help with Purgatory Water Partnership and capacity building of them as a watershed group. This is about an 8-piece, 10-piece orchestra. We're trying to put this thing together, and we really appreciate the support of the staff and your support in trying to make the project work.
Questions for Gary? Director Gallagher.
Funding that either under the Environmental Water Plan Grant Fund or under the program or some other source?
Most of it looks like it's going to go over to the Watershed Health and Restoration Program.
Yeah.
We're also getting some money from the Soil Conservation there to help with the invasive species removal, public land versus private land.
Right.
But yes, and then our expectation for the Colorado Water Plan grant is really about the recreational and educational component when you put a bunch of folks from out of town on the top of a head gate, there's some security issues. There's somebody fishing off of the diversion dam or the. We're just trying to work through those things, but the private developers putting up $100,000 a match to help with the design and some of the improvements. So we've got a working table of all the pieces and how they go together. Probably a couple of times before we start next spring.
Thank you.
Further questions for Gary? Director Goebel.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. This is an example of a project that Gary is our BIP coordinator and helped all these groups come together and provided leadership to see this project through. If there's no further discussion, I move to approve staff recommendation, including the conditional approval that's been described, item 22E.
Motion by Director Goebel, second by Director Dutton to move staff recommendation and all its attachments on agenda item 22E. Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by an aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Before we leave agenda item number 22, I would like to thank all the applicants for making the long journey to Walden. We truly appreciate it. And congratulations, Ben, on your very good. So. All right. At this point in time, let's move to agenda item number 23.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, the AG's report is in the board's materials, and I'm happy to respond to any questions that you might have at this time.
Are there any questions of Laura at this time?
So if there are no questions, pursuant to statute, I recommend that the board make a motion to go into an executive session to consider items 24A through E as identified on the board's agenda. This session is authorized pursuant to the provisions of section 246402, 3A2 of the Colorado Revised Statute.
Motion by Director Gallagher, second by Director Yon to move into executive session. Further discussion? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by an aye. Aye. Opposed? We are officially in executive session. Are we